Sometimes, you gotta kill your darlings. As writers, you and I can become extremely attached to and proud of certain characters, moments, or lines that we write. And we deserve to be. We created something out of nothing but our imaginations, then gave it life by putting it into words. But sometimes they can't keep that life, and in cutting certain elements out, it can strengthen your overall story, themes, and pacing. So prepare your memorial, because not everyone will make it to the end. Hi, I'm Nia. Welcome back to another writing vlog. Today I'll be working on Project Fortune. If you're new here, welcome and hello. Project Fortune is the first book in an epic fantasy series that I'm working on, just so you know. In Project Fortune, there are two main protagonists, and the story alternates between their POVs. Originally, there were four, one of which I cut when outlining the first draft a few years ago, because I realized he didn't have enough going on to warrant his own plot line, and he was made a supporting character instead. So the first complete draft of my manuscript contained 3 POV characters, all of whom I was very attached to. However, when my editor recommended cutting one of those characters from the novel, I was extremely resistant to the idea. I had all these thoughts. She's so important, she brings a different perspective, she's integral to the story. She was not. When I analyzed the various major and subplots I had going on, I realized every single one of her plot lines was redundant and happening with one of the other 2 POV characters, and I realized my editor was right. But cutting her out didn't just mean cutting her, it meant cutting a cast of characters and locations that her plots revolved around, and really great scenes that gut punched you when you read them. I didn't want to lose all of that. After mourning this character and taking a beat to collect myself, upon reflection I realized some things. While there was a lot being removed, that didn't mean it had to be lost forever. In this specific case, where this character, meant as a foil to the other POV characters, had so many parallel plots to existing characters. I just say characters so many times. It occurred to me that I could recycle and rework some of these moments for the other characters in the story. Not all my darlings had to die. The chapter I'm working on today has several leftover scenes that have been cut and lumped together after I went through and cut this character out, as well as some other stuff from the story. These scenes are interconnected but have sections that don't make sense or are wrong after the changes that I made. In this scene, my main character basically arrives at a safe house and begins training to learn how to control her magic. In this writing session, I have 4 goals. Fix continuity errors. Originally, there was a time lapse of a few weeks that's been cut out. Info dump the magic system. I'm doing this in the form of a conversation that happens during the training session. Condense into one continuous scene. This involves cutting things that are no longer applicable or reworking what's left over. Expand the character arc throughout. Part of the main character's internal arc is overcoming her fear of her magic and the guilt that she feels because of it. Outline. I have an outline and a chapter breakdown of my novel. So I first looked at that to see what events occurred before and after, which will inform how the characters will enter the scene and the direction they need to go for the next chapter. I also note how much time has passed since the previous chapter, the time of day, and the weather. View the scene you have to work with and make a chapter outline of what happens in the new scene, keeping in mind what you can use from what you already have. This can be as brief or as detailed as you need it to be. My chapter outline usually consists of a few bullet points. Sequence of events, world building aspects that need to be communicated, and how, character arcs, internal and external conflicts. Make notes of anything that's missing from what you already have, and note where it happens in the sequence of events. Cut and organize. When I started revising Project Fortune, I made a copy of the document first. All the changes and edits happen in the copy, which I'll title something like Draft 2 or Revision 2. That way, I'll always have a copy of the original draft, and if there's anything that I cut, that I later want to add back in, I can go back to draft 1 and copy it from there. There are some lines and sections that aren't going to make it in regardless, so go through and cut those out. With what's left, organize it into the order that makes the most sense for the chapter arc and story. I like to add brackets with notes of what's missing or what's changed in those spots where those sections will be added. If there's info in the middle of a sentence that needs to be cut, I'll do the same thing with the brackets, or I'll put a generic placeholder in all caps so it's easy to spot when rewriting. Rewrite. So now you've done all the prep, it's time to write. For me, this part can sometimes feel like more of a task or a burden than the prep. Like I went through all the hassle to do the project, but the presentation seems like the hardest part. Let me remind you, like I remind myself, 90% of the work is done. That's the great thing about writing and revisions. The work is already there, it's already done. The creative burden of creating something from scratch, while enjoyable, can be anxiety-inducing, especially if you're experiencing like writer's block or something. You have to shift your mind from creation mode to editing mode. The best way to get past this and start is to force yourself to sit down and start reading your writing. I'll start spotting small mistakes or think of better ways to word something, and then suddenly 2 hours have passed and I've finished revising the chapter. Read. Once you finish revising your chapter, review your outline again and read through the chapter. You want to make sure everything that you needed to add or correct was, as well as any mistakes that you find. Sometimes mistakes are easy to miss because your brain knows what it's supposed to say or what you thought you wrote, so it'll fill in the blanks. These are some things that you can do when reviewing your chapter to help you check these things and make sure you're not missing anything. Change the font color, font size, or layout of the page. Making it look different than it was when you worked on it makes it seem new to your brain, and it's easier to spot mistakes. Read it out loud. Reading your work aloud activates another part of your brain, and hearing the words can bring attention to clunky sentences or missing words. You don't have to do the reading part yourself either. Many document programs and computers have built-in read aloud options so you can listen and follow along. Come back later. Take a break and review the chapter with fresh eyes. Giving your brain other things to focus on and putting time between your revision session and your review session makes it less likely your brain will fill in missing words or fly through ill-written sentences. When confronted with a large piece of work to fix, it can feel overwhelming and you might not know how to start. Breaking down what you're doing into manageable steps can help you get past any creative blocks. So to recap, have a list of goals so you know what needs to be accomplished in the scene. Make a chapter outline of the order of events. Make cuts and organize the leftover sections. Sit down and complete the revision once the prep is done. Read the completed scene with fresh eyes to check for mistakes. Comment below which tips you found most helpful, and check out my next writing vlog where I attempt to do a plot grid for the first time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. Bye!